Two offshore structures dominate wealth protection, but most investors only use one. The Cook Islands Trust is the world's strongest legal fortress, and the Panama Foundation is the ultimate estate planning tool. Separately, they're powerful. Together, nearly impregnable. I'm Jerz from the Jerz Way, a contributor to IMI and a longtime entrepreneur and global citizen. And in this video, I'll show you how billionaires stack these two gold standards for maximum protection and privacy. But before we get into which one you should use, you need to understand the critical elements that make each structure attractive. They come from completely different legal traditions, and that matters more than you might think. Trusts come from English common law. A settlor transfers assets to a trustee who manages them for the beneficiaries. Foundations, on the other hand, come from civil law, the system used in continental Europe and Latin America. A Panama Foundation is its own legal person, and it owns assets in its own name. It has a founder, a council, and usually a protector who makes sure the founder's wishes are followed. If you're from the US, Canada, or the UK, trusts will feel more familiar. But if you're from Europe or Latin America, foundations will make more sense to you. But familiarity isn't everything. How much control do you want to keep? That's the million-dollar question. This is where the two structures really start to differ. And for many people, this is the deciding factor. A Cook Islands Trust gives you the strongest protection, but only when you give up direct control. The moment you start telling the trustee what to do, that protection weakens. You have to let go of the reins to get the full benefit of the trust. A Panama Foundation works the opposite way. The founder can stay involved. You can appoint and remove council members. You can write detailed bylaws that tell the foundation exactly how to manage and how to distribute your assets. In other words, you remain in the driver's seat. So Panama gives you control while the Cook Islands gives you distance. You can't have maximum protection and maximum control at the same time. But what does maximum protection actually look like? Let me show you why the Cook Islands has such a fierce reputation. You're here for a reason. You probably care about one thing above all else: keeping your assets safe from people who want to take them. Lawsuits, creditors, ex-spouses. The Cook Islands was built for exactly this. To challenge a Cook Islands trust, a creditor has to jump through some major hoops. They can't just show up with a foreign judgment. They have to file a brand new lawsuit in the Cook Islands, hire local lawyers, post a significant bond, and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you created the trust to commit fraud. Not probably fraud, beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the same standard used in criminal trials. And the statute of limitations is usually just 1 or 2 years after the transfer. Panama is strong too, but it's not this extreme. Panama courts can still recognize foreign judgments in some cases, and the bar for proving fraud is lower. If your goal is a legal fortress that makes creditors give up before they even start, the Cook Islands Trust is unmatched. But asset protection isn't the only thing that matters. What about privacy? Both structures can give you deep confidentiality if they're set up correctly. A Cook Islands Trust keeps everything private. There's no public registry, so one can look up who the trustees or beneficiaries are. Panama Foundations work a little differently. The charter is filed publicly, but the bylaws remain private. And the bylaws are where all the important stuff lives. The list of beneficiaries, the distribution rules, everything. On privacy, both structures perform equally well. This one's a tie. Now let's talk about something you're probably dying to know: taxes. I need to be clear about this up front. Neither structure is a magic tax eraser. Both the Cook Islands and Panama treat these structures as tax neutral. They won't tax income that comes from outside their borders. But per usual, your tax obligations depend on where you live. If you're a U.S. citizen, you still have to report everything. If you live in France, same thing. Sure, These structures can help you organize and defer wealth, but they do not make you invisible to your home country's tax authority. Think of these as planning tools, not necessarily tax shelters. They work best as part of a broader international strategy. Speaking of planning, let's talk about what these actually cost. The two structures differ greatly on this measure. A Cook Islands trust is a premium product. Setup costs typically run between 10 and 20,000 US dollars. Annual maintenance, another 3 to 5,000. You're paying professional trustees, local compliance, and ongoing administration. A Panama Foundation is much similar. You can expect to pay about $5,000 to set one of these up. Annual costs in the low thousands. No reporting requirements unless the foundation does business inside of Panama. If budget matters, Panama wins this round easily, but cost isn't everything. You also need to think about how banks and financial institutions will treat your structure. Both jurisdictions have solid reputations in the offshore world, but they're known for different things. The Cook Islands is the platinum standard for asset protection trusts. Everyone in the industry knows it. And likewise, Panama is the gold standard for foundations. The country has been doing this longer than anybody else. But practically speaking, from my experience, banks are much more comfortable with Panama. They deal with Panama Foundations all the time. Cook Islands trusts can raise more questions. Swiss banks especially prefer foundations. Civil law is what they know. If smooth banking is a priority, Panama has the edge. So we've talked about what happens when you're alive and administering the structure, but what happens to your wealth after you're gone? Panama Foundation law was written with one thing in mind: estate planning. A Panama Foundation works almost like an uncontestable private will. You write the rules and decide exactly how and when your heirs receive the inheritance. And those instructions stay confidential in the bylaws. Trusts work a little bit differently. Trustees have discretion. They decide when and how to distribute to beneficiaries. Of course, that feature allows for flexibility, but less certainty if you want specific outcomes. For clear, predictable succession planning, Panama Foundations are usually the better choice. So the question is when to use which? Well, it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If your main concern is protecting wealth from lawsuits, creditors, or future claims, the purpose-built Cook Islands Trust is unmatched. If your goal is estate planning, privacy, and easy management, the Panama Foundation is usually the better fit. It's ideal for holding assets, setting inheritance rules, and keeping control. But for maximum protection, you stack both of these, one on top of the other. The Panama Foundation holds your assets, your bank accounts, companies, real estate. It manages everything day to day. The Cook Islands Trust sits above it and owns the foundation itself. Now you have two layers of legal separation. The foundation handles administration and gives you control. The trust shields the entire structure from outside claims. The result, flexible and nearly impregnable. This layered structure achieves what every high net worth individual ultimately seeks: control, continuity, and true protection.